You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Hristodoulou.
Welcome back once again, everybody, to the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Hristodoulou, and this time I'm coming at you with picks for Sunday's games for Week 10 of the USFL, the final week of the 2023 regular season. Playoffs begin next week. The Birmingham Stallions have a playoff spot locked up, but there's still 3 remaining, and it's winner-go-home weekend in the USFL. There's a lot to discuss and get into, so make sure you comment down below. Let me know who you think wins Sunday's games, and when this video's over, if you haven't already, make sure you check out my picks for Saturday's games as well. But we are diving right into it, beginning with the first game of Sunday, the New Orleans Breakers taking on the Houston Gamblers at 4 p.m. Eastern Time at Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium in Memphis, Tennessee. You can catch this game on FS1. The Breakers are coming off of a massive W over the Showboats last week, completely blowing them out in a game that had it felt like a 3-hour rain delay or whatever it may have been because of the storms that were going through. But they are coming off of a massive blowout victory, whereas the Gamblers come into this game mustering up only 15 points off of 5 field goals in a blowout loss to the Birmingham Stallions, as I mentioned, who have already locked themselves up a playoff spot. So, diving into this game here, looking at both teams. For the Breakers, what I want to see this team do as a fan and also as just somebody picking for these games here, what do they have to do to come out victorious in this matchup? Well, they already beat the Gamblers once, so when we look at the way they did it the first time, I think there's a lot of similarities in how you can go about this game a second time, but I think maybe surprise them a little bit. Offensively, I want to see you air out the football. It seems like the passing game has found a second wind here, while McLeod Bethel-Thompson has been a little bit shaky the last month or so. He has 5 interceptions in the last 4 games that they played, having no interceptions, though, last weekend, but ultimately not necessarily a great game altogether numbers-wise. I want to see them air it out. The Gamblers' passing defense has not been great. They are actually the only team in the USFL right now allowing over 200 yards per game. That is a league worst. So with that in mind, don't be afraid to throw the football. Obviously, you want to establish the running game with Wes Hills. I think with him having so much success the first time these two teams played, 110 yards on the ground, 3 rushing touchdowns as well. You want to get the ground game going, but just use him as a way to kind of establish the run and open things up for your passing attack. I really want to see them focus on Sage Surratt in the passing game, though. This guy, unbelievable game the first time that they played. 11 receptions, 121 yards, and a touchdown to boot. He was borderline unstoppable in that matchup there. So if there's a guy that I want to see this passing game focus around, let's go back to Sage Surratt, see what you can pull out of that well, because I think he looked really good the first time around. They had a very difficult time dealing with him, and I think he kind of mismatches a little, or not mismatches, but matches up well for the Breakers against this Gamblers passing defense. But on the other side of the ball there for the Breakers defense, what they need to do in order to come out victorious in this one here is eliminate running back Mark Thompson. He is going to be the X factor for this team here. And we saw him kind of take a bit of a beating last week, getting up slowly a few times, holding his ribs. He was limping at one point as well, but he had only 17 carries for 56 yards against the Stallions last week as they lost that game. And you saw what it kind of did to the offense. It just kind of snatched the life away. And he is the heart and soul of the Gamblers offense, in my opinion. I feel like without him, the Gamblers offense is a little bit of a mess and they can't really finish drives. On top of that, if you can eliminate Mark Thompson, that means you're forcing Kenji Bahar to throw the football more, and with that comes the opportunity to force some mistakes. You boast one of the most aggressive passing defenses in the USFL, specifically that secondary, not afraid to go after the football in the air, as they are tied in the USFL for most interceptions with 11 on the season. Couple that with the fact that you were also tied for first in the USFL with sacks at 24. This is a matchup made in heaven if you can slow down Mark Thompson and force them to throw the football. So get rid of Mark Thompson, and I think you have yourselves a really good opportunity to do some damage defensively. As for the Gamblers going into this one here, on the offensive side of things, I've got to get this one out of the way, and I think it is the most important thing to go by here. You cannot be settling for field goals the way you did against Birmingham last week. 5 field goals is not going to get you a victory, at least in my opinion, over the New Orleans Breakers. You need to finish drives, first and foremost. On top of that, keeping Kenji Bahar's passing attempts down a little bit lower might be a good idea here. Like I mentioned already with the Breakers defense, their secondary and hell, even their linebackers are a really good group when it comes to pass coverage. You don't want him throwing the ball into that group too often. So if you can keep his numbers a little bit lower, that typically his sweet spot is somewhere around, like, I would say 20 passing attempts or so per game on average. That's where you get some of the best production out of him, where the weight isn't too much on his shoulders and he's able to make some plays here or there, but you're not forcing him to throw the football too much, because that's where I feel like the mistakes start to come into play. And the best way of doing that is opposite of what I said the Breakers defense needs to allow happen. You need to establish the running game. Mark Thompson did get banged up. At this point, I haven't seen depth charts at the time of me recording for the Sunday's games yet, but I do expect to see Mark Thompson play just because playoffs are on the line. I know that he was hurting, but I feel like there's a difference between being hurt in football and being injured. And I think that Mark Thompson is going to want to go and make a statement here that he is going to help this team at least make a fight towards the possibility of being in the playoffs next week. So establish the run. Don't force Kenji Bahar to throw the football too often, and I think you have a recipe for some success and an opportunity to win this game, and you have to finish drives. You cannot be settling for field goals. As for the defensive side of things, you've got to be disruptive against this passing attack. Like I said, I feel like the Breakers right now, passing game has kind of found itself once again, and with that, you do want to be aware of the possibility that maybe they don't just try to come after you in the run game again and they try to open things up through the air. I feel like Jonathan Adams and Johnny Dixon as a duo have really started to light things up the last few weeks, and obviously there's the threat of Sage Surratt, and Wes Hills can catch out of the backfield. You've got to be disruptive against the pass. Bring the pressure. Try to force McLeod Bethel-Thompson into making mistakes. As I already mentioned, he does have 5 interceptions in the last 4 weeks. He had none last week, but the 3 weeks prior, he threw 5 picks, and he has 5 touchdowns in that same span. So, and his completion percentage is only at 61% average, and that's because he had, in between those 4 games of 50% completion numbers, he had like a lone 73%. But if you can force McLeod Bethel-Thompson into making some mistakes, I think you have yourself a shot. And this defense is very aggressive. It's not afraid to go after the football, so it's something I expect to see from them. And on top of that, you've got to find an answer for Wes Hills, because he had himself an absolute game the first time you guys played. Sage Surratt should also be on that list as well. I feel like right now, the Breakers have kind of caught a little bit of fire again. They're not quite all the way there, and you don't want to let your passing defense that has not necessarily been the greatest get exposed by a unit that is like on the cusp of once again being that dominant unit they were earlier in the season. As for who I think, though, ultimately comes out victorious in this matchup here, I put a lot of thought into this game because this is one that is a lot of high stakes. I feel like both teams really have a good opportunity to contend for the title if they make it into the playoffs. But right now, when I just weigh out the two teams in terms of talent and just where they are coming off of last week, I'm feeling a little bit better about the Breakers, so I am going to go with the team that I root for in this one here. Tried not being a homer when I was making this decision here, and I think I came out with a realistic possibility, in my opinion. It's going to be an exciting game. I have a feeling. Something is telling me that this game is going to be a nail-biter, and I'm going to be on the edge of my seat as I root for the team that I root for and also picked to win this game. I have the Breakers winning, and I have them winning 31-27. I feel like it comes down to late in the game, maybe a final scoring drive to finish things off, or maybe it's one of those things where the gamblers are on that final drive and maybe they fail to finish things off and make the comeback happen. But ultimately, I like New Orleans. I think they come away with the victory, and we get to see ourselves, Stallions and the Breakers, once again in the playoffs for the South Division. And then finally, and I can't believe we're here and I'm saying this, the final game of the 2023 regular season for the USFL at 7 p.m. Eastern time from Ford Field. The Michigan Panthers have one last opportunity to win a football game in front of their home crowd as they take on the Philadelphia Stars. This one will be on Fox if you're looking to watch. The Stars come in following a failed comeback attempt that was very close against a surprise New Jersey Generals team that a lot of people thought were dead in the water, but ultimately got DeAndre Johnson back and big things happen. And the Panthers, the offense that it seems like it's trying to find its footing. We have teams in a couple of different places right now, and a little bit concerned about the Panthers offensively, but their defense is an anchor and probably the biggest reason why they might still be in this game as we wind down the final minutes. I will say this, looking at the Stars, Offensive line has been very hit or miss this year, but I would say more so on the miss than anything else. They have got to be ready going up against this Panthers pass rush, especially with Breeland Speaks in there. He leads the league with 9 sacks. I believe he has 3 more than the next guy behind him. You've got to be ready on the offensive line. And I think if you run the football and keep your passing game a little bit quicker, the Stars have a lot of talented skill positional players. If you get the ball in their hands quickly, you can let them do their thing. But you cannot put yourself in a position where you're dropping back and taking, 3, 4, 5 seconds to make a decision as to where to go with the football, because this Panthers pass rush can bring you down and make you pay for taking too long. So run the football, keep the Panthers defense honest. They haven't necessarily been great defending the run. They've allowed the 3rd most yards in the league at about 105 yards per game. So take advantage of that, establish a decent run game early, and then open things up through a quicker passing game. And then, maybe you find yourself a deep shot or 2 down the field to Corey Coleman. On the defensive side of the ball, I think this one's a little bit simple here. You need to create havoc for Josh Love, and you have a pretty solid pass rush over there in Philadelphia. Not the best, but not the worst. You're somewhere in the middle there, middle of the pack. But we saw last week what can happen if Josh Love is put in a position where his running game is struggling and all the weight is on his shoulders. If he has to throw the football and it's all up to him to win the game, he can crack, and it can be somewhat ugly. We saw 4 interceptions from him last week in their loss to the Maulers, and I think if you can create havoc for Josh Love, and the run defense has to step up in this game here. Again, I have not seen depth charts for this game yet. If there's no Reggie Corbin, you have a really good opportunity to have a at least solid game, because it was a clear struggle to run the football for the Panthers last week with just Stevie Scott. I will be very curious to see how this defense fares against the Panthers, because I really think this game kind of rides and dies on what the Stars defense can do. If they can slow down the run game and not let Stevie Scott take over, if it is just Stevie Scott, but if Reggie Corbin's in there, this is even double the more importance. But if you can somewhat slow down the run and force Josh Love to win this football game, let's say he's trying to go strike for strike with Case Cookus, I don't know if he can win that battle. So stop the run, put the weight on Josh Love's shoulders, and your defense, pretty aggressive one at that, solid one. You have a guy like Levante Taylor, who's been an excellent and I feel like unsung hero of the Panthers defense, someone that doesn't get enough attention because maybe he doesn't have the interceptions, but he's been locking people down all season long. You have a real chance at pulling off the victory and securing yourself that 2nd North Division spot. As for the Panthers, how they come out victorious here, and we kind of just touched on it a lot with the Stars defense, Josh Love has got to be better with protecting the football. He cannot allow the mistakes that he's been dealing with to come up again. He has got to play it safe and a little bit more conservative with the football. On top of that, if Reggie Corbin is playing or not does not really matter. If they cannot establish a run game, I don't think that they can go shot for shot with the Stars, plain and simple. If this game ends up being a pass-happy game from both sides, because I could realistically see a possibility where we get absolutely no run game from either team, and they're both just throwing the football. Case Cookus, not necessarily a guy known for turning the football over, but he can have 3 touchdowns in a game week in and week out if necessary. Again, I don't know if Josh Love can keep pace with that, and you have got to get some sort of running game going. Stevie Scott, pretty talented running back. He can definitely get some things done, and granted, the Panthers played the Maulers last week. You have a much easier run defense this week in the Philadelphia Stars, who are the league's worst run defense, so you have an opportunity to get a better run game going this time around, but if you can't get something going on the ground, you are going to be in some trouble. As for the defensive side of things, this is a weak Stars offensive line. They've allowed 28 sacks on the season, which is the 2nd most in the USFL. If you can bring the pressure, bully them up front, slow things down in the passing game, I think you have a real opportunity, or excuse me, not slow things down. You want to speed things up in the passing game so you can force Case Cookus to throw the ball sooner. Speed things up, not slow. But if you can speed up what the Stars are trying to do in the passing game here, you have at least a shot. But if there's one person that I'm talking to, and I already mentioned his name once, in order for the Panthers to be able to stop what is going on with the Stars offense right now, somebody needs to shut down Corey Coleman. I feel like I've kind of gone around this offense a little bit and been picking out guys, but if there's one person that I feel like I'm consistently talking about this season, and at this point has kind of separated himself from the rest in terms of receivers in the USFL, it has been Corey Coleman. He has been killing defenses as of late, especially the last few weeks. Altogether on the season, 613 yards. He has 4 touchdowns, and he's been averaging 13 yards a reception here. And he has no trouble catching a ball for 30-plus yards and either taking it to the house or putting you at like the 5-yard line to potentially score on the next play. Levante Taylor has been great, and I've seen him on social media bring it up. You know, no one's really talking about him. I don't know if he hasn't led a touchdown still to this point or not. I should have, shame on me. I should have done the homework on that. But if there is like a put up or shut up moment for Levante Taylor, it is this game. He needs to shut down Corey Coleman. If he has him lined up across from him, it is up to him to mitigate whatever he's trying to do offensively, because Corey Coleman has been a massive reason why this offense can be as explosive as it is and keeps them in games. The defense has really been what's let down the Stars this year, and again, if you're going shot for shot with the Stars, odds are a lot of their shots are coming from Corey Coleman. Levante Taylor needs to put that to bed if the Panthers want a shot at winning this football game. As for who I think comes out victorious and wins the final game of the 2023 regular season of the USFL, this is a tight one for me, because I don't really think it's that cut and dry. I was very surprised at the way the Stars played last week. I did not expect the Generals to give them as much of a problem as they did. And granted, I've talked a lot about the struggles of the Stars defense, and I think some of that might show its ugly head here. However, I am very concerned about the passing attack that they have over there with Michigan and Josh Love's ability to, again, go shot for shot against a Stars defense that can be at least solid in the passing game. I don't know if the Panthers can get it done at home, and it would be awful for them to just go winless in front of a home crowd this season, but I'm going to go with the Philadelphia Stars for the victory here and locking up that other North Division spot. I think it's going to be a tight contest, 24-16. It comes down to the wire, but I think maybe turnovers ultimately give the Panthers just too much of a problem, and they are not able to get it done. But that is it for me. That's how I look at the final week of the USFL's 2023 regular season. Again, comment down below. Let me know your picks, your thoughts and opinions on mine. Love to openly discuss with you all. But that is it for me. I will see you all for power rankings next week, and also the start as the USFL ends. NFL content is going to start picking its way back up, and get yourselves ready for some USFL playoff football next week. I appreciate you if you made it to the end of the video. I'll see you all next time. Have a good one.